The desert didn't forgive mistakes, and Clara was learning that the hard way. The sun beat down mercilessly, making the sand shimmer like a mirage, and every step she took felt heavier than the last. Her horse had bolted at some point, leaving her to stumble across the open plains, the heat pressing against her like a living weight. She hadn't seen it coming, a sudden, sharp pain between her legs that made her gasp and collapse to her knees. Whatever it was, it had sunk its teeth or stinger into her, and she knew immediately that it wasn't just a scratch. Venom was spreading through her system, a cold, creeping dread that made her stomach turn. She tried to push the panic down, tried to steady herself, but her limbs refused to obey. The desert around her was vast, silent, and merciless, offering no comfort, no shade, no mercy. Then she saw him, a figure moving in the distance, emerging from the jagged rocks that broke the monotony of the sand. A lone cowboy, tall and broad, rifle slung low across his back. For a moment he froze, taking her in with eyes that were sharp and calculating, scanning the threat she represented, or maybe just trying to understand what had happened. Clara's voice broke the quiet desert air, strained and desperate. "Don't just stare," she warned, her teeth gritted against the pain. "Something bit me. It's spreading." The cowboy didn't hesitate. He crossed the last stretch of sand with steady, deliberate steps and helped her to her feet, supporting her as her knees buckled beneath her. He guided her toward a small patch of shade beneath an outcropping, using his coat to shield her from the sun. His hands moved with confidence, checking the wound, tearing cloth to bind it, murmuring under his breath in a way that suggested he had seen this before. Clara could feel the venom working its insidious magic, making her lightheaded, her thoughts swimming in and out of focus. Around them, the desert remained eerily still, except for the distant cry of a hawk circling above, as if bearing silent witness to the struggle below. Each second felt elongated, stretched thin by fear and pain. Clara's chest heaved as she tried to maintain control over her body, while the cowboy's eyes never left hers, steady and unwavering. By the time the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the sand, the danger was far from over. The venom had already begun to assert itself, and both of them knew that survival depended on speed, knowledge, and the strange bond forming between a desperate woman and a stranger willing to save her life. The desert waited patiently, as if savoring the tension, while they fought against the creeping poison that threatened to claim her before nightfall. The line shack was barely standing, its walls cracked and warped from years of neglect, but it offered the only shelter they could find from the relentless desert sun. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of old wood, but it was better than baking in the open plains. Clara slumped against the corner of the shack, every muscle trembling as the venom coursed through her body, leaving a heavy, burning ache in its wake. She could feel the fever setting in, her thoughts flickering like a broken lantern, fading and flaring without warning. Ethan, the cowboy who had found her, moved quietly around her, assessing the wound, his hands steady even as the pain made her flinch involuntarily. Every movement was deliberate, measured, as if he was defying the desert itself with his calm. She fought the fever as best she could, swallowing bile and shaking from chills. Her mind, fogged and fragile, drifted to memories she hadn't dared revisit in years, memories of riding alone, of taking risks that had left her vulnerable. Now faced with the real threat of death, those memories seemed trivial, distant, and yet painfully sharp. Ethan, sensing her struggle, didn't press her for words. Instead, he worked silently, using remedies he had carried with him, herbs, compressed cloths, and knowledge passed down from trail doctors and Comanche healers alike. Every touch, every adjustment was meant to slow the venom's spread, to keep her alive until her body could fight back. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of rain. Clouds gathered, dark and heavy, rolling over the desert horizon like a living, breathing threat. The first rumbles of thunder vibrated through the air, shaking the shack's brittle walls. Inside, time seemed to stretch impossibly long, each second a battle between life and the creeping poison. Clara's breaths came in shallow gasps, her body slick with sweat. Yet she clung to consciousness, desperate not to give in. Ethan's presence was a constant, unwavering reassurance, his eyes never leaving hers, his hands always ready to steady her. Hours passed, though it was impossible to measure in the haze of pain. Finally, as the storm broke outside, rain splattering against the roof and soaking the cracked wood, the fever began to ebb. Clara's breathing slowed, steadier now, her body less burdened by the venom's weight. The danger was not over, but she had survived the night. In the quiet aftermath, as the wind carried away the last echoes of the storm, something unspoken settled between them. It was not desire, not yet, but a fragile bond forged in the crucible of survival, one neither of them could deny. In the desert, that bond was enough to keep them going, if only for a little longer. Morning came to the desert sharp and unyielding, painting the sand in shades of gold and crimson, casting long shadows over the cracked earth. Clara awoke slowly, her body stiff and aching from the night of fever and struggle, but alive. The venom had stopped spreading, though its memory lingered in the soreness of her limbs and the fatigue in her bones. She blinked against the brightness, her mind clearing as the adrenaline ebbed, leaving only the quiet, persistent thrum of survival. Ethan was already awake, moving around the shack with a calm efficiency, packing their meager supplies, checking the horses tethered outside, his eyes occasionally meeting hers with a steady reassurance. The world felt fragile, as if a single misstep could shatter it. Yet the sun rose without hesitation, indifferent to human struggles. He approached her gently, offering a hand, and she took it, her fingers gripping his in a silent acknowledgement of trust. Every step she took was careful, measured, as if the desert itself could betray her at any moment. They moved toward the horses together, a fragile balance of strength and caution. Clara could feel the bond between them solidifying, forged in the crucible of fear, pain, and mutual reliance. Words were unnecessary. Each glance, each gesture carried a weight that neither had the energy nor the need to speak aloud. The silence around them was profound, filled only by the whisper of the morning wind and the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead. When they mounted their horses and began riding, the desert stretched endlessly before them, vast and unchanging. The trail split in the distance, two paths diverging into unknown futures. Clara glanced at Ethan, searching his eyes for any sign of fear or hesitation, but found only steady determination. "You saved my life," she said finally, her voice quiet but firm, carrying the weight of everything they had endured together. He shook his head, a faint wry smile touching his lips. "You fought to keep it," he replied. His words were simple, but they carried a depth that resonated far beyond the surface. As the trail led them onward, the desert seemed to watch them, silent and eternal, indifferent yet somehow approving. Some encounters burned bright and brief, leaving only ashes and memories. Others left scars, subtle yet permanent, etched into the heart and soul. This one left something harder to name. A bond formed in the thin line between life and death, fragile yet unbreakable. Clara looked forward, the sun glinting on the horizon, and for the first time in days, she felt hope mingled with caution. The desert had tested her, and she had survived. Not alone, but with someone whose presence would linger in her memory long after. The dust had settled,